Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Call to order this regular meeting of the Littleton City Council. Roll call, please.
Mayor Brinkman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallman.
Here.
Councilmember Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Cernanik.
Present.
Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor. Councilmember Valdez.
Present.
Will you rise for the pledge, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right.
Okay, Council, any changes to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, the agenda is approved. I will just mention that due to our swearing-in ceremony and council transition of Mayor Pro Tem, we need to try as best we can to conclude the business meeting by 8. If we don't, we will have to move things into the meeting preceding the swearing-in and the council vote. Okay. The minutes from the special session of October 22nd, 2013, any changes?
I believe I sent a couple of minor comments.
Okay, seeing no changes tonight at the dais, those will be approved. Minutes of the special session, October 29th, 2013.
I believe
Same
I sent,
thing.
yeah.
Okay. Those are approved as amended. Minutes of the regular meeting, November 5th, 2013. Same thing. Those are approved as amended then. Okay, we have no guest citizens. No one has scheduled a public presentation. So we will move to our unscheduled public appearances. This is an opportunity for any citizen to express an opinion or ask a question regarding city services, council policies, or other matters of community concern that are not part of our scheduled agenda. We do have 3 public hearings this evening, so if you're here to speak on any of those, please wait until those hearings. Generally, an immediate response should not be expected, and typically issues are referred to the city staff for follow-up information or research, and then reported back to council and the individual who initiated the comment or inquiry. If you're interested in speaking, please raise your hand. I'll call on you when you come down to the dais. We do have a 4-minute time limit, and we ask that you give us your name and your number. The clock will clock you down. I do have 2 people that have filled out cards, and I would encourage, if you do want to come down to fill out one of these cards and give us your information, the subject that you're going to speak on, so that we are able to get back in touch with you. I'll call Janine.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. Thank you so much. You guys have some wonderful stuff going on tonight, so I'm not going to take up a whole lot of your time. Briefly in front of you is an information packet on what we would like to do as far as additional medical marijuana grow for our shop. It highlights odor control, it highlights safety, it highlights everything that I think you guys might need to know. And if you have any questions, I'm here. That's what we're wanting you guys to do.
Okay. We'll give this a look, and we'll work through staff to get any questions back and forth with you. Okay? Michael?
Yes, we'll follow up. Thanks.
Thank you. Laura Droz?
Hi. Thank you for letting me be here tonight. I'm Laura Droz. I'm the co-chairman of the Arapahoe Santa Claus Shop, and I'm here for 2 purposes. First of all, and most importantly, is to thank the City Council for the money that you've given us in the past, your financial support. Last year, we gave toys to over 2,700 children in the cities of Littleton, Inglewood, and Sheridan, and we are very proud of that. We couldn't do it without your support financially, and also without the help of our volunteers in the city. Of the 400-plus volunteers, the majority of the volunteers that put together the Santa Claus Shop do come from the Littleton area. Quickly, so that if you don't know how the Santa Shop works, families are referred to us through schools in Littleton, Inglewood, and Sheridan, and also through churches and other organizations in the community. And then we are inviting them to come to our shop to purchase toys. Of course, it's not monetary. They use 100 points per child, and they're able then to come and pick gifts for their children, knowing what their children would like to have for Christmas. It's a great opportunity, if you have not been there, to please come and visit us, to come see us. That's the second purpose of my visit here today, is to invite you to come and see the Santa Shop. We take the Arapahoe County Multipurpose Building, which is right behind the Extension Agency, right there on Datura Street. It's just a big warehouse. We turn it into a nice Christmas shop for parents that have been invited to come and choose gifts for their children. And the shop this year is on the 12th and the 13th of December. That whole week, we will be there setting up, making it look like a store, inviting place for them to come and choose gifts for their children. And I would love to invite anybody here, including City Council, to come and see what we do. I know Peggy's been there before. If you have any questions, we have flyers, we have a website, and this is our 54th year. And as I said, last year we gave toys to over 2,700 children. We don't know what to expect yet because we don't have our referral numbers in yet, but we think it will probably be more, and definitely couldn't do it without the help, the support of all of our city.
So do you prefer money or toys, donations, or?
We prefer either. Financial is wonderful because we kind of have a feel for what families and what popular toys are out there now, what families are looking for. We really, really love having games and books. We feel that's really important for family time. So money helps us get those things, but we do take new donations of toys and gently used. We like to call them gift ready, things that still look nice and that children would enjoy getting. Yes.
And I know in the past you've taken used bicycles to be refurbished, and I'm imagining that's still the case.
It is. We have a wonderful group of people that refurbish bicycles, also that refurbish dolls, and that take gently used books and make them look brand new. And games also. They take games, save pieces over the years, put them all together, so we make sure we have complete games to give families. So.
And are you needing more volunteers?
Right now, I could not answer that question. We can always use volunteers. We do have a volunteer coordinator, and you can find her name on the website, especially if you plan to bring a group in. That makes it easier for us so we don't have a big influx of people at one point, and we're kind of going, what do we do with you right now? So if you can contact our volunteer coordinator on the website, her name is Anne Marie, so you can find her on there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I leave these somewhere?
Sure. If you want to leave them up at the back tables, then people can take them as they...
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Betty? Sure, thanks.
I'm Betty Harris. Good evening, Board. Earlier when I came, I saw some kind of a brochure here. Maybe it was a trifold or something.
Oh.
I don't have to start over, do I?
No.
And then I was curious about it because I understood it to say, and it was about chore services programs. That's what it's called now. And it looked like there's a new brochure. And it says you may be eligible to receive chore services if you live in Arapahoe County, are 60 years of age or older, unable to perform these chores due to health problems, or have limited resources. Is this anything to do with the city, or is this just the county?
I'm familiar that is a county service.
Okay. Do you happen to know whether or not on this list of things they're either or all of them?
You know, I think they work with the individual person to see what kind of help they need that would be most beneficial. I think there may be a time limitation or a period of time that they can spend with them, so they may have to prioritize.
Well, it does say it's like 3 to 4 hour blocks.
Yeah.
And I had understood it before that there was, it was like you use volunteers to do this. I don't know if they pay people to do it.
I cannot answer that.
Okay. Because I was really having some questions, because we do have some people in town who really need help, and I'm thinking maybe they don't know this. And maybe if we see a situation, we should actually give them this so that somehow they'll know.
You're right, Betty, and actually that came up at the retreat. Also, that there were some county services that may not be making it to people who could use that service because they don't, they're not touched by the internet, or they're not touched by mail,
Right.
or they're not on Meals on Wheels list. And so you're right, there is a group that needs to get this information.
Yeah, because we just cleaned up for a neighbor down near Heritage High School. Took a whole bunch of us almost a whole day to do it. And so I was wondering if what I had read was true or not, but this is Arapahoe County and not Littleton.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Jack? Okay, get this right.
My name is Jack Woodman, and as commander of the Littleton VFW, Pat Hannon, Post 4666, I'd like to recognize 3 Littleton government members tonight. First off, and I understand he's not here, is David Flagg. Since its inception and dedication, the Littleton World War II Memorial in Kettering Park has been the site of many post programs on Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and other occasions. David has been the one person who has watched over and been the guardian of the memorial. He was the City of Littleton's representative on the committee which brought the memorial to life. And so we have a plaque here for David, and Mayor, if you could see that he would get that,
Absolutely.
I would appreciate it.
Thank you.
The second person, I think she's here, but I don't know where. Kelly Nardi. Kelly is our post contact and interface with the City of Littleton, and we want to thank her for all of the help she has given us in making our life easier. So we have a plaque for Kelly. Thank you. Last but not least, Mayor Debbie Brinkman. Mayor, over the years, we have had the Littleton mayors speak to us on Veterans Day at the World War II Memorial.
Don't you dare.
None have had the impact, great comments, and positive feedback that your speech last week did. It was very heartfelt and accepted by the veterans who were there. One of your comments was that you had never eaten an MRE. And tonight you're in for a big treat because retired Marine Colonel Richard has a MRE for you. And we also have a plaque for you. So, all right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah, that's good. Thank you very much. All right. Yeah, that's good. Careful what you ask for, huh?
Never say never.
Congratulations.
Okay, anybody else? Jack?
No.
Jack Randall, I can't believe you were so eager to get that MRE, and I hope it's a modern one. The reason I'm speaking today is that tomorrow from 3 to 5, you're going to have a meeting of the Charter Review Committee next door in the community room. It's been held up at the library, or at the museum, and there have been a few citizens there watching it. I recorded it. And tomorrow would be a great opportunity to put this thing on Channel 8 and archive it so people can see what you're doing with the organic document that created this government and puts the restrictions and the requirements on it. And if you can't find it, that you can record it, I will videotape it, and I'll give you a copy of the videotape with my name on the bottom of it. But it's the most important thing you've got going on right now because it can fundamentally change the rules of the city. It's just like amending the Constitution. It's the same importance at a city level. So I would urge you to see what you could do to get Doug to videotape that or to broadcast it so that it's available, because there's not a lot of people that are aware of the discussion going on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck with the MRE.
Anybody else? Okay. Seeing no one, we will move to our consent agenda. These are items that can be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion, and any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of council member. Item 6A is the approval of a resolution authorizing a third amendment to an intergovernmental agreement between the city and the Urban Drainage Flood Control District for stream enhancement improvement on the South Platte River in South Platte Park. This is basically this is a commitment to the second phase of our river enhancement project. And I just add to this, I got excellent news this evening that Colorado Water Conservation Board has approved $100,000 towards this project. So, okay, I need a motion, please.
Madam Chairman, I move that we approve consent agenda item 6A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries.
Okay. Okay, item 7A is on second reading and a public hearing. This is an ordinance. I will read that ordinance. This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending City Code Sections 10-1-2, 10-3-1, 10-3-2, 10-4-6, and adding 10-4-16, allowing breweries, distilleries, and wineries in industrial and commercial zone districts subject to standards and defining emissions. Glenn? Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. I'll just give you a real brief history. We first approached this subject on August 27th. We talked about this is kind of a burgeoning industry, and we've had several purveyors ask about providing these uses in retail districts. So we took a look at it. We put together a draft ordinance. On October 28th, we showed that to the Planning Board. Got their input. They did recommend approval by a vote of 6-1 on October 28th. And then we presented to Council on November 4th. And at that time, staff presented a couple of proposed amendments. And if you remember, we had a requirement that there must be a tasting or a retail room as a part of these that equaled 30% of the gross floor area or 1,000 square feet, whatever is the minimum. Or the maximum. We felt that after hearing from some of these purveyors that there's an optimum size to these retail areas or the tasting rooms, and they shouldn't be on a sliding scale based on the total square footage. We recommended that we actually take that portion of the code out. Our city attorney also drafted additional language for the emissions part of the ordinance that talks about obnoxious odors, that ties it back to give the city an opportunity if there is a federal or a state conflict with what is being emitted by one of these uses, we have the ability to come in and straighten that out. So some of the concerns we heard from council is that perhaps with the requirements for a minimum size or a maximum size, and at that point we said 6,000 square feet in the CA district, which is primarily our downtown, and 10,000 square feet in the B1 and B2 districts, perhaps we ought to take another look at that and maybe look at where there's actually vacancies and perhaps tie it be a little bit less restrictive, or I guess that's how I interpret it, in the outlying shopping centers where we have high vacancy rates. So we did take a look at the vacancy rates, and they go anywhere from 3,000 feet up to 20,000 square feet, and up to 50% in some of our retail districts. So we felt this would provide a good shot in the arm. So we are recommending that there not be a minimum standard for square footage in the B1 and B2 districts, that we just have stricken that from the code. However, we did retain the 6,000 square feet in the CA district. However, this has been a work in progress, and staff has been even up to today discussing that and debating it. And if we are going to present to you possibly an amendment to that, it's a very hard cap, that 6,000 square feet, and there really it would be no way of going beyond that. And I think our concern is if you have a great space in the downtown, happens to be 6,200 square feet, it wouldn't be an allowed use. So what we're recommending at this time is to take another look at that section, and that would be at paragraph D, that states in the CA district, the maximum square floor area of the manufacturing establishment cannot exceed 6,000 square feet unless approved as a conditional use permit per our code. And that would basically, if we have somebody who's 6,500 square feet, 7,500 square feet, it's a great use. It would really add to the environment of the downtown. Our planning board can evaluate that and make sure that it's an appropriate use in the downtown. So with that, we are recommending approval. We did note one other minor change to the ordinance. We were missing a word in the second whereas paragraph, and so we would recommend that change as well. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council might have.
Bruce?
So when we approve this tonight, we're approving it with the recommendation that you just told us in paragraph D. Is that
it would have to be part of?
Or do we have to make an amendment at this time to that?
Right. That's what we'd recommend, is that be part of your motion, amended as provided by staff or something.
Okay, thank you. And I have one other question, because I know it was struggled with, and that is in paragraph section 5D, and it's the issue of the continuous, obnoxious, harmful, or dangerous condition beyond the boundary line of the lot, et cetera. And it has to do with the odors. And I have to tell you, I really don't know what the odors would be. I've never been in a distillery, but I've certainly been in a winery, and we had 5280 here. It's got to be something unique to a distillery for us to be concerned with it, because it certainly doesn't seem to emanate from a winery or a brewery.
Right. The only thing we've been told is from a brewery, the spent hops will have an oatmeal smell. It's certainly a temporary smell. I guess...
Coors and Golden, I mean, but, you know, that's gazillions of gallons. But I know
right.
In town, it's just been a non-issue. So.
Right. Yeah, and this section of the code actually talks about all uses. So it is not just breweries and wineries and distilleries, but also a restaurant would be held to this standard as well. So that's why we felt that it's perhaps we need to provide a little bit more standards for when it becomes obnoxious.
Okay, I think that's real reasonable, but I'm just not sure I can. I know, and we're going to go by a reasonable man standard, you know, of what is obnoxious and continuous, and certainly the judge will have to consider that if it ever goes to the court. But, geez, it just seems like to me that we're creating one of those tough ones to enforce. That's all. Just a comment more than anything. I understand the need for it.
Other questions? Phil?
Just a real quick one, Glenn. Old Mill has been brewing. Level of complaints or history on any kind of odors?
No, I'm not aware of any that we've had from them.
Okay, thanks.
Jerry?
One of our letter writers had mentioned to us something about they didn't see the need to change the code.
Right.
And to add this language in there. What is your position on that?
Yeah, we took a look at that, and she's referring to, if you look at the industrial district, it specifically points at this section of the code, saying you must meet this standard. And I think her position is, therefore, it only relates to industrial uses and not all other uses. Our attorney, excuse me, took a look at that, and because of the language where it says all uses, She really felt that we're talking about two different things. We're talking about the design of the facility that must meet these standards, and then the operation, and she feels the operation would have to meet this standard. So any land use operation would have to meet this standard.
So then with Columbine and then the previous businesses that were there that brew, how do they work, how do they do that now legally without us having to change it already?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that.
But going back to Mr. Shenanig's question, they're operating now.
Right.
And how is that why can't others operate now?
They could. They've been held to that standard that no odors shall leave the property line. We have not had complaints about uses.
So if someone can come in and do a brewery now, then why are we changing the code to say that you can still come in to do a brewery?
What we're doing is allowing the breweries in a retail district.
And that's the one line is all that's really being...
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Glenn. Okay, this is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing, and we have a sign-up sheet. We have one person that signed up, Susan Neese.
You got it. Now I don't have to come anymore. I was waiting until the time to get it right, and then I don't have to come in anymore. Okay. I am Susan Neese. I did write that letter too, and it was confusing to me. But I'm going to go with how the city interprets. Okay, my name is Susan Neese. Address is 7301 South Highland Drive. First, I'd like to make a correction to my letter that was in the packet. It does appear there are shopping centers on some of the B3 zone properties in the city. Also, I'd like to point out, I believe the staff analysis on the bottom of page 2 of the City Council communication is incorrect in stating that this proposed ordinance specifically prohibits hazardous or obnoxious emissions within any property boundary line. As you are aware, in my letter in my packet, in your packet, I was opposed to this ordinance prior to the changes made since City Council's first reading, and now I'm even more greatly opposed due to the nature of these changes. I do not understand how such revisions can be made between the two readings which so fundamentally alter the nature of this ordinance without it going before the Planning Board again for a review and vote. This is not an ordinance anymore that purports to be only about small-scale or boutique microbreweries, microdistilleries, and winemakers that are limited in size and seeking only to be in downtown Littleton and shopping centers. Unlike the examples the city staff provided of the other municipalities, this ordinance allows for full-fledged industrial breweries, distilleries, and wineries with no limitations or restrictions other than the states and the requirement of a tasting room regarding their size, quantity of production, hours of operation, or other modes of operation in all of the B1, B2, and B3 zone properties that run throughout the city of Littleton. In addition, this ordinance, for the benefit of a supposedly clean industry, seeks to turn completely upside down the emission standards Littleton has successfully implemented for at least the last 21 years, so that these businesses and all others in the community can produce a variety of emissions up to and beyond their property lines, and the city or those who are affected and complain about their emissions will be forced to go to court to argue about whether they violate arguable standards such as being obnoxious or continuous. For the record, I consider the smell of oatmeal obnoxious, which is one of the odors the senior planner stated is emitted by these industries. When I walk around downtown Littleton, shop at my local King Soopers, or run along the Platte River, I don't want to have to smell oatmeal or worse. I believe this ordinance assists in destroying the very nature, character, and quality of life of Littleton and those who work and live in the community. How is it in the best interest of Littleton to propose and promote that the alcohol industry with its accompanying industrial operations move into all areas of town without any limitations or restrictions regarding size, quantity of production, or number of such businesses in the city, and with a liberal emission standard? Money and jobs cannot be the answer if it destroys the very city you're seeking to preserve. And that's what this ordinance does at the cost of the community's health, safety, welfare, and quality of life. It creates a city where the alcohol industry proliferates throughout the town with its accompanying impact on both adults and children in the community. Their industrial facilities and operations arise throughout the city, emissions by a variety of businesses previously prohibited spew forth and are argued about at taxpayer cost. And a message is sent to the community that the city government seems to support and promote the alcohol industry over other industries and businesses. In effect, from what I can tell, the proposed ordinance now bypasses all rezoning requirements that would normally apply to an alcohol-related manufacturing business wanting to move on to a non-industrial business-zoned property, such as going before the planning board on a case-by-case basis, reviewing its impact on the neighborhoods around it, and allowing for public hearing. I find that a little too open for business to be in Littleton's best interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to come down and speak on this subject? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing, and I need a motion.
I move that the ordinance amending Littleton City Code Sections 10-1-2, 10-3-1, 10-3-2, 10-4-6, and adding 10-4-16, allowing breweries, distilleries, and wineries in industrial and commercial zone districts, subject to standards and defining emissions as amended by the staff recommendation, be approved.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Bruce.
I guess for Glenn, it may be the best place. I want to go back to this to make sure I understand. Staff's recommendation is to change the emissions section of the code. And in the materials that we were provided, it has the changed ordinance, and it's on page 54 in my book here. What would be the impact of not making that change? Because I think we went through the Breckenridge Brewery discussion without this change.
Right.
And now we're putting it in. And I was comfortable with the circumstance that was presented with Breckenridge at the time, and now I'm seeing this provided. Is it because of the close proximity in a retail area? And help me understand exactly why we want to go to this wording, which I think is it is something that is subject to, it's subjective. It's a subjective judgment.
Right, right. And I think this is a step in the right direction, because right now it's subjective and it's absolute. No odors shall go beyond the perimeter of the property. So yes, the reason we brought it up now is because we're talking about these uses in close proximity to other uses and closer to property lines. So we thought we'd create more of a standard for that smell. Now, Breckenridge Brewery, they have their own PDO. They have that old requirement on their property. This doesn't change that. So they're still under that old standard of no odors leaving the perimeter of their site. We think perhaps that's going to be an issue with enforcement in the future, but that's what's in place today, and that doesn't change with this ordinance.
Okay. Phil.
Glenn, my recollection is when we started some of this discussion was how to deal with microbreweries and micro distilleries and kind of fit in that. And our original piece that I recall, it kind of had some ranges and limits and stuff as to when folks hit some of that. And if we would change a property in a B2 and it becomes a micro distillery or a microbrewery, how do we know it stays at the micro status, or is there any provisions in this to keep it at a micro status as opposed to somebody maybe coming in and building a vertical that takes it out of the what might be appropriate?
Yeah. And in our the research that we did, and it's not only with the folks that are in the business, but other cities that have worked with this, I think what we found was there's just kind of a land economics that goes into effect, where if they get to a point where they have to increase their license to get up to the 50,000 barrels a year, whatever that number is, they really need a bigger facility. And they need to have it be more in an industrial area where it's cheaper and there's more access. The folks that are going to be attracted to perhaps an expensive retail space are those kind of boutique creators of the product. They're starting out, they want to get their name out there, they want to get folks involved in their product. And then if they're successful, they move into an industrial district and they do it more at a much larger scale. So we played around with putting limitations of barrels. I mean, that's a very hard thing. I would volunteer to measure that, but it would be a hard thing to really require. So we think there's just going to be a natural economic reason that would keep them small in these areas.
And when they go through something like this, so that if they're putting anything together and they have a tasting facility, is there going to be a hearing with the licensing board as well as what would be in the planning board?
And my understanding, and Wendy could certainly correct me, but I think if it's just a tasting room tied to a brewery distillery, no. If that changes and it becomes a bar or a brew pub, then yes. Then now if it's being consumed, you know, quantities are being consumed by the public, then it's something subject to the licensing board. And that's another reason for this ordinance. This is a little bit different than a bar. Susan's concerned about, I think, the moral issue of it, but, you know, a bar is allowed in all these districts, which is where perhaps you have the externalities of, that go along with a bar.
And if there were a scenario that someone is kind of pressing the limits of what we would think would be appropriate, I understand the land use is kind of being that, but who knows where technology may take us at any point in time. Is there a protection component? Do we need a protection component as long as they're adhering to the other elements of what is being proposed?
For instance, like a cap on square footage, or what would that be? I mean, you always can amend your ordinance and bring it back. I guess the risk is once a use is legally established, it's legally established until it changes. So, for instance, if you feel a particular use is not a good neighbor, and certainly from a code standpoint, we could stop things like traffic and noise and light. We still require all those restrictions. But you could amend this ordinance as well. However, you would have then a non-conforming use, basically.
Got it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Peggy?
So when does tasting become drinking?
The liquor board has it, actually the state liquor board has it defined pretty, I don't know what that definition is, but there is, I think, an actual ounce requirement, and if somebody exceeds that, it's a police issue just like any liquor violation. I don't know exactly what those standards are, but the state does legislate when does tasting become something more.
Okay, I wish we had that background here. I should have asked you probably before. I'm still not comfortable with how we're going to define continuous and obnoxious. What's obnoxious, as we already heard, to one person might not be at all to another, and vice versa. And the continuous, I can't wrap my brain around at all. So I wish we could have had a huge discussion on this in study session to kind of beat up a bit on it. I'm just not thinking this is ready for going forward. So.
Ken?
If I could respond to Councilmember Cole's question, at least on the definition of obnoxious, well, actually for both terms, continuous and obnoxious, are common terms that are found in nuisance-related provisions of codes all over the state. There's case law that talks about it. Admittedly, they do not subject themselves to black and white, check off the box, this is obnoxious, or this is continuous. Continuous does not mean 24/7, 365. It means something less than that. But I would let the council know that we, in our definition of nuisance in the city code, refer to anything that is offensive, another word that is subject to interpretation, or obnoxious to the health and welfare of the inhabitants of the city. And that term nuisance appears about 38 different times in different places in the code. So all I would suggest to you, it doesn't make it any easier to figure out what it is, but I would suggest to you that if it's not a problem that you've heard recurring on a periodic basis with code enforcement, it's not something that I am overly concerned that we're going to have a problem with enforcing as it relates to the ordinance that's before you tonight.
Any other questions? Thanks, Glenn. Okay, council, discussion? Any discussion? Ready to vote? Okay.
The vote is 5 in favor with Councilmember Cole voting no. The motion carries.
Okay. 7B, this is an ordinance on second reading amending provisions of the city code regarding floodplain regulations. I'll read the ordinance. It's ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending provisions of the city code regarding floodplain regulations. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Bob Deeds. I'm the floodplain administrator for the City of Littleton. Also the city engineer for all those who drive our streets during a day. It's usually I've got a contractor out there working and making the world a pleasant place for everybody. This evening, I'm bringing to you some changes to the floodplain definitions that we have. The Colorado Water Conservation Board has adopted some new regulations, and we're bringing our regulations up to their standard. We're required to upgrade our regulations when the state makes some changes. We have been involved in the National Flood Insurance Program since 1978. We have 400 plus properties in Littleton that are located near or within a floodplain. And so it's a big thing for a lot of people that live in Littleton. There's some definitions that are being changed or proposed for change in our code. Definitions for critical facilities, other flood areas, and the definition of floodway. So now we get real exciting. I noticed our guys are starting to push towards the front of the line. We have, I have included in your packet those detailed descriptions of critical facilities. And those are facilities that are considered essential to providing public health and safety to the community. They're in 4 categories: essential services, hazardous materials, at-risk populations, and vital to restoring normal services, which would be police and fire. Critical facilities are elevated to be flood-proof to an elevation 2 feet above the base flood elevation. The base flood elevation is the 100-year floodplain. You may have heard that term up north here where we've had some flooding occur, and 100 year.
Also heard 1,000-year.
And there's a bunch more after that. We have about 142 properties in Littleton that we consider to be a critical facilities. Those include fire stations, police stations, hospitals, retired community care, that kind of thing. So we have a list of those that we keep track of. In the proposed standards, we're looking to change the flooding limit of floodway by a half a foot. Currently, it's 1 foot. We're going to go down to half a foot. What effect that has is that if we had large areas in Littleton that have floodplains and someone wanted to develop in that floodplain, they would fill in the floodplain and affect the floodway elevation. The floodway width is, if you were looking at a stream and it's running along, it's where it looks like the water is really moving. Where you get closer to the bank, it basically comes to a standstill. You know, you just kind of look at it. That's the floodplain area. Other definitions are the other flood areas. We're bringing in the 500-year flood definition into our criteria now. That's used by FEMA and the Colorado Water Conservation Board to define some areas that are outside of the 100-year flood, but still subject to flooding by the 500-year storm. We're required to adopt these new regulations by January 14th of 2014. The FEMA has given us 3 years to change our regulations to comply with that requirement. And so we've been working on them now for about 3 years, getting them up to date. Staff recommends that the proposed amendments to the floodplain regulation ordinances be approved. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer those problems that you might have about floodplains or questions.
Question, Council?
Nope.
Bill?
Just reading through these, generally I would expect them to be more restrictive, but I'm not sure I caught that quality comment, because you go from 1 to a half foot, and I'm starting to think maybe that's a loosening of requirements as opposed to a tightening of requirements.
What happens there is, let me put up a little picture here for you.
Doug?
Give you a little quick picture of this. Oh, good. Here we have a sketch or conceptual plan of what the floodplain looks like along a creek. And you can see there's a section in the middle that's that's the floodway as defined from here to here. Now what we're doing is we currently allow encroachment into the floodplain that can increase this elevation by a foot. The new regulations would only allow you to increase it by half a foot. So that's being more restrictive to develop in the floodplain.
And then the other question that I had, Bob, is to what extent has this been screened with anyone that's impacted in the city?
Well, we haven't really sent it out to the public, but we do send out a notice annually to every resident who has property in the floodplain, advising them that we have the floodplain regulations and that they are welcome to come to our office and look at those maps, and we will go over their specific property and describe their situation to them.
So if someone's in, say, an existing floodplain now, and the regulations end up being adopted by the city, for someone that's currently has a property that's in the floodplain, what's the impact to them?
They will not have to do anything. They can just stay where they are. Now, if we have a flood in Littleton and their property is damaged by more than 50% of the structural value, then this comes into play. They would have to either upgrade their property by elevating it so it's 1 foot above the floodplain elevation in order to keep the home.
So this impacts what ends up being covered in case of a flood?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a public hearing, and we have no one signed up on the roster. Is there anyone interested in coming down and speaking? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
I move the ordinance amending provisions of the city code regarding floodplain regulations be approved on second reading.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries.
Okay, item 7C. I'll read this. This is also a public hearing. I'll read this ordinance. This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending Title I, Chapter 4, Section 1 of the Littleton City Code to increase the maximum fine from $1,000 to $2,650 for violations of the city code and to limit and adjust the municipal court fines for inflation on January 1, 2014 and on January 1 of each year thereafter. Wendy? Do you have anything you wanted to add?
I have no additions from last.
Discussion? Okay, council, do you have any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, this is also a public hearing. I don't have the roster. Did anybody sign up to speak to this? Does anybody wish to come down and speak? Okay, seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing, and I need a motion.
Go for it.
Somebody make a motion.
I did the last two. You can do it.
Madam Chairman, I move that the ordinance amending Title I, Chapter 4, Section 1 of the Littleton City Code to increase the maximum fine from $1,000 to $2,650 for violations of the city code and to limit and adjust the municipal court fines for inflation on January 1, 2014 and on January 1 of each year thereafter be approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries.
Okay, moving on to our first readings. 9A, this is, I'll read this by ordinance. This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending ordinance number 25, series of 2012, known as the Annual Appropriations Bill for all municipal purposes of the City of Littleton, counties of Arapahoe, Jefferson, and Douglas, State of Colorado, for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2013 and ending December 31, 2013. Council, I would suggest, based on the time, if you have questions, it might be appropriate then to email them to staff. This one I think may have some additional questions to it. Getting into it might take us past the 8 o'clock hour. So it is on a first reading, so we'll be able to have public hearing and larger discussion with this when we have our second reading. Any objections to kind of handling it that way? Okay, then I need a motion, please.
Madam Chairman, I move that the proposed ordinance amending ordinance number 25, series of 2012, known as the Annual Appropriation Bill for all municipal purposes for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2013 and ending December 31, 2013, be approved on first reading and a public hearing be scheduled for December 3, 2013 at 7 p.m. in the council chamber.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries.
Okay. Ordinance, let me get this. 9B, this is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, approving an access easement between the City of Littleton and LCP 2009 LLC. Okay, same applies here. I would recommend emails or questions to staff, and we'll go over it in detail on the second reading. Okay, motion, please.
Madam Chairman, I move that the ordinance approving an access easement between the city and LC. Oop, I just moved the page. Anyone want to finish it?
What he moved. I moved that the ordinance approving the access easement between the city and LCP 2009 LLC be approved on first reading and a public hearing be scheduled for December 3rd, 2013, at 7 p.m. in the council chamber.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Guessing no. Ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor. The motion carries.
Okay. Seeing no other business, this meeting is, well, Wendy?
You have to appoint me as the chair.
Okay, so
What about reports?
do I need to adjourn this meeting or appoint you now?
You have to appoint me before.
Okay.
Are we jumping over reports?
Yeah, we're not going to do reports tonight, unless you want to do reports.
So
for a
I just have
couple.
one item I want to bring up for reports.
Okay.
Okay. And I bring this up on occasional meetings, about every other one, that I would really like to see is move the reports to the beginning of the agenda as we used to do it. I believe at the end of the agenda, not tonight necessarily, but often, we do lose the crowd at TV as well as here. And many of the items that we do hear or do speak of during the reports, and it could be anything, reminding people, just as Betty Harris did earlier about neighborhood, helping neighbors, leaf drop-off pickups, which is what either was it Peggy or Jim mentioned last time, and that was the end of that. But I really would like us all to consider relocating that back to the beginning of our agenda. That is all. Thank you.
Okay, Wendy?
So I do have comment.
Okay.
So, because I would like to make this be, if we're not going to say anything afterwards, I'd like to request that the newly formed council revisit several of our documents. So can I make that request now?
You don't need to, because we're going to. I mean, we've already got on our list that protocols, the legislative rules, council goals and objectives are, and I've said this for
and
ever.
the economic plan, which I requested when we first approved it.
Well, that'll be up to the council when you get the newly council seated on whether or not you want to revisit that particular document. But
I will have to wait till next meeting to ask.
yes.
Okay, anything else? Wendy? I have no formal verbiage, so.
You just
I guess I'll-
appoint me as the chairman of.
Okay, I'm appointing Wendy Hefner, city clerk, as temporary chair.
Then adjourn the meeting.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned.
Okay, I call this meeting to order at 7:56 p.m. on November 19th. I ask all council members to stand.
You weren't ready?
Yes.
That would be
Yeah.
Well, apparently. I was going to be individual. At least it should be for.
You can do it whichever way you'd like, sir.
I think you have to do it one by one.
I think if you do it as a group and have them say their name during.
Okay.
Oh, okay. That'll work. Sure. Whatever.
Please state your names.
I, Debbie Brinkman.
Mary Valdez.
Do solemnly affirm or reaffirm
Solemnly
Affirm and
reaffirm
reaffirm.
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the Charter and ordinances of the City of Littleton,
the Charter and ordinances of the City of Littleton,
and will faithfully perform the duties
and will faithfully perform the duties
of City Council member
of City Council member
upon which I am about to enter.
on which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you want to do a quick
Okay.
picture of all of them
You
with
got
the
it right.
judge? All of them with the judge?
Yeah, make it official,
Want to stand up there, Judge?
Yeah, come on up here. Come on up here.
Where are we going?
Separation of powers.
This is the mingling of powers.
But I can't be way above, sir.
No, come on down. Don't step on my MRE, please. I hate to squish it.
Let's squish
You can't hurt it.
Squish together.
Squish.
There you go.
Like dot right here.
There you go. Very nice.
Hey,
Thank you, Kathy.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank
Thank you, sir.
for the honor of doing this work.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Randy Stein.
My pleasure. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Thank you, Judge.
Thanks, Judge. Watch that last step there. Jeez, God, dog. Did it again.
I will now entertain a motion to appoint a mayor for the city of Littleton.
Madam Clerk, I would like to nominate Mr. Phil Sinanek as council president.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, I'll do this by roll call. Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Brinkman?
Yes.
Councilmember Cernanek?
Aye.
Councilmember Cole?
Yes.
Councilmember Stallman?
Aye.
Councilmember Stein?
Yes.
Councilmember Valdez?
Aye.
The motion carries 7-0. I will now entertain a motion for Mayor Pro Tem.
I would like to nominate Bruce Beckman.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call. Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Brinkman?
Yes.
Mayor Cernanek?
Aye.
Councilmember Cole?
Yes.
Councilmember Stallman?
Aye.
Councilmember Stein?
Yes.
Councilmember Valdez?
Aye.
The motion carries 7-0.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
I adjourn this meeting at 8 o'clock.